Hello everyone, and welcome to A History of the Ancient World. Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating power dynamics in human history, the relationship between kings and priests. Who really held the power in ancient civilizations? The one with the crown or the one who spoke to the gods? Let's find out. In the earliest cities, from Mesopotamia to Egypt, the lines were often blurry. Many of the first rulers were priest-kings. Think of the Sumerian Ensi or the Egyptian Pharaoh. They weren't just political leaders, they were seen as divine or as the chief intermediaries between the human world and the heavens. Their authority wasn't just based on military might, but on their sacred duty to maintain cosmic order, or Ma'at as the Egyptians called it. Performing rituals, interpreting omens, and building temples were as important as collecting taxes or leading armies. This fusion of power was a brilliant strategy. By controlling both the earthly and the divine realms, these rulers created a system where challenging their rule was not just treason, it was blasphemy. As societies grew more complex, these roles began to separate. A distinct priestly class emerged, dedicated solely to religious duties. In places like ancient Babylon, the king was the supreme ruler, but he couldn't just do whatever he wanted. The priests of Marduk, the city's chief god, held immense influence. They managed vast temple estates, which were economic powerhouses in their own right, controlling land, workshops, and trade. They were the scholars, the astronomers, and the scribes. A king who wanted to go to war, build a new palace, or even just ensure a good harvest, needed the priest's approval and their rituals to secure divine favor. If the omens were bad, or if the priest declared the gods were displeased, even the most powerful king could find his authority crumbling. Let's jump over to ancient Egypt. The relationship between the pharaoh and the priesthoods, especially the powerful priest of Amun-Ra at Thebes, is a perfect case study. The pharaoh was a living god, Horus on earth, but over time, the temple of Amun-Ra at Karnak grew so wealthy and influential that it rivaled the pharaoh's own power. Priests controlled a huge portion of Egypt's land and wealth. We see this power struggle come to a head with the famous pharaoh Akhenaten. He tried to completely sideline the old gods and their priests by establishing a new monotheistic religion centered on the sun disk, the Aten. It was a radical move, a direct attack on the Theban priesthood's power base. But what happened? After Akhenaten's death, his successors, including the famous Tutankhamun, quickly reversed his reforms and restored the old gods. The priest of Amun had won. This shows that even a divine king could not easily break the grip of an entrenched and powerful religious institution. Now let's look at the ancient Israelites. Here, the dynamic was different again. The books of the Hebrew Bible are filled with stories of prophets who acted as God's messengers, confronting kings. Think of the prophet Samuel anointing first Saul and then David as king. His spiritual authority gave him the power to make and unmake rulers. Later, prophets like Nathan would boldly rebuke King David for his sins. This established a powerful idea. The king was not above divine law. He was accountable to a higher moral and spiritual authority, represented by the prophet or the high priest. This created a constant tension. A good king was one who listened to God's messengers and upheld the law, while a bad king was one who ignored them and led the people astray. This moral dimension gave the priesthood and the prophets a unique form of power, not based on wealth or armies, but on their role as the nation's conscience. What about the Greco-Roman world? In democratic Athens, religious offices were often integrated into the civic structure. Priests and priestesses were citizens performing a public duty, and their roles were often rotated or elected, preventing any single religious group from accumulating too much power like in Egypt or Mesopotamia. However, religion was still vital. Oracles, like the famous Oracle of Delphi, held enormous sway. Before making major decisions about war or colonization, city-states would send envoys to ask the gods' advice through the oracle's priestess, the Pythia. Her cryptic prophecies could shape the course of history, demonstrating that even in a more secular-minded society, the need for divine sanction was deeply ingrained. In Rome, the story is again different. Early on, the king, the Rex, also held the title of Pontifex Maximus, the chief priest. After the kings were expelled and the republic was founded, religion became a tool of the state, controlled by the aristocratic senate. Priesthoods like the pontiffs, the augurs who read omens, and the Vestal Virgins were powerful political positions held by members of the ruling class. Religion wasn't a separate institution challenging the state. It was part of the state's machinery of power. Declaring a certain day religiously unfavorable could postpone a vote or a battle, a tactic often used for political gain. When the Republic fell and the Empire rose, the emperors, starting with Augustus, reclaimed the title of Pontifex Maximus, once again merging the ultimate political and religious authority in one person, and often declaring themselves gods after their death. So, who held the real power? The answer isn't simple. It was a constant dance, a delicate and ever-shifting balance. Power wasn't a single entity, but a complex web of military, economic, and spiritual authority. Kings had the armies and the tax collectors, but priests controlled the gateway to the divine, which gave them immense psychological and social influence. They could legitimize a king's rule, making him seem chosen by the gods, or they could delegitimize him, painting him as an enemy of the divine order. In many cases, they were two sides of the same coin, working together to maintain the structure of society. The king handled the earthly problems, the priest handled the cosmic ones, and together they kept the world running. But when their interests diverged, the resulting conflict could shake civilizations to their very foundations. This eternal push and pull between the crown and the altar, between temporal and spiritual power, is a theme that didn't end with the ancient world. It has continued to shape human history right up to the present day. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the halls of power in the ancient world. What do you think? Who was more powerful in the long run, the king or the priest? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to History of the Ancient World for more deep dives into our incredible past. We'll see you next time.